Welcome to the Silksong Witch Crest Deep Dive. In this series, we'll be analysing every crest and uncovering all the numbers from DPS and range to knockback and recoil, and every bit of info you could ever want to know in between. And with that said, let's jump straight in. The Witch Crest is a unique crest with an extremely combat-focused slot layout. The Witch Crest shines at medium range, giving you the opportunity to hit enemies with its long-range attacks, while also being close enough to capitalize on opportunities to nuke groups of enemies with the AoE damage from its bind. This bind deals damage in an area around Hornet and heals based off of the damage dealt. This does the same damage as a Silk Spear if all 3 hits land, essentially letting you double dip from Silk by healing and casting a spell at the same time. Putting the bind aside, it doesn't have a whole lot of damage potential with its base needle attacks, but it does make up for it with its stronger than average sprint attack and needle strikes. The Witch Crest can be obtained through the completion of both the Rite of Rebirth and Infestation wishes. To begin these, you'll need to find the Twisted Bud, found here in Bilewater. From there, you'll want to take it to Greyroot in Shellwood, where some shenanigans ensue, and you wake up in the Chapel of the Witch. Once here, you'll notice you can no longer bind or use any tools whatsoever, as you're now cursed. Keep in mind there is a missable achievement here to beat the final boss while in this state, so now would be the time to do that should you choose to do so. Otherwise, you're going to want to head to Yarnaby, located on the map here, who's going to be happy to help, however will require you to gain some materials. Head over to Krull and Benjen in Sinners Road and you can snag these materials for 160 rosaries. Hand in the steel spines and sit back for a rather horrifying cutscene. Once that's done, the Witch's Crest is all yours. All the numbers for the stats we're analysing are going to be based on having a fully upgraded needle, and will be shown as 3 different data points: the raw value, the value as a percentage compared to the Hunter's Crest, and finally, how that stat ranks among every other crest. The Witch Crest doesn't have any passive abilities to speak of, as all of its extra effects are expressed through the moveset, which we'll cover in the appropriate sections. The Witch Crest has the second highest needle range in the game at 257.5 pixels, which is going to net you around a 38% increase from the Hunter's Crest. And that's going to come with a hitbox area of 32,143, the third largest of all crests. The swing time is a bit on the higher side at 0.45 seconds, and while that puts it at the 5th place, 9% longer than the Hunter's Crest, it's not so bad that it becomes a problem. So far, the statistics of the needle attack have been overall pretty good, but here's where it's going to take its first L. With a hit delay of 0.118 seconds, it's the worst in the game by far. The second worst was the Reaper with 0.018 seconds, and from there it rapidly decreases. I first noticed this when using the Witch Crest for the flea juggling minigame, and it comes across as input lag. Use it long enough and your brain will adjust, but it can certainly throw you off at first. Of all crests, I would not have guessed this one would have the lowest Hitbox Linger time, but it does, and by a fair margin. At 0.078 seconds, it shows up around 0.03 seconds less than the average crest. Luckily, since this crest has such good range, it's less of an issue than it otherwise would be. The Witch Crest is able to output 2.22 attacks per second, a slight dip when compared to the Hunter Crest, but not by much. But it still puts it on the lower end of the spectrum overall. The DPS output is pretty bad, ranking number 6 out of a possible 8, and only beating the Reaper and Shaman crest in this category, which isn't saying much considering these 3 crests would need around a 20% boost to compare to the crests in the middle of the pack. 35 pixels of knockback was measured when hitting Zengo with the Witch Crest attack, and that is the smallest amount in the entire game. This translates to 60% less knockback than the Hunter's Crest, and puts it in the last place overall. Keep in mind though, being last here isn't necessarily a bad thing, as low knockback is often more of a help than a hindrance. And as for the recoil, this is technically the only crest that has a unique value. 25 pixels of recoil was measured, the lowest amount in the game and 38% less than the standard amount. The upswing of this crest is going to have 208 pixels of reach, the second highest in the game, and while it does slightly favour one side, it's so big that it's not generally an issue. Here's where we're going to get our first bit of weirdness for this crest. The downswing is one of the shorter ones in the game, ranking 6th overall at 166 pixels. However, upon making contact with a target, Hornet will vanish, becoming untargetable for around 0.2 seconds and dealing 22 damage over 2 hits, but still only generating 1 silk. The area of the hitbox is gonna snag 3rd place overall, only being outdone by the Fury boosted Beast Crest and the Reaper Crest. The sprint attack has a range of 585, ranking 4 out of 8, and is also going to have the vanish mechanic, 0.14 seconds visually, although the iframes do continue on a bit longer than this. This move is made up of 2 needle attacks, and upon landing the second one will deal a 3rd vanish attack. These attacks hit for 21, 10, and another 10, making it the highest damage sprint attack in the game, outside of the charged Architect sprint attack. Remember the Cyclone / Nail Art from Hollow Knight? Well, it's back in the form of the Witch Crest Needle Strike. This is a multi-hit spin attack that can be extended by spamming the button, hitting 2 to 6 times. This is going to give it the highest potential damage of any Needle Strike at 102 damage, 75% more than the Hunter Crest Needle Strike. Oddly, despite it being a multi-hit, you still only get 1 silk from it. The range of the Needle Strike is 320, placing 5th overall, although notably this hitbox goes on either side of Hornet, so it can potentially hit enemies on both sides at once. The main issue with this Needle Strike is just how hard it is to get all the damage off without either taking damage and being interrupted, or without just knocking the enemy out of range yourself. So weighted belt definitely comes recommended with this one. Just like in Hollow Knight, it also slows the rate of your descent when in the air. And now for the thing that really sets this crest apart, the bind. Instead of using silk to heal, binding with the Witch Crest instead causes vines to lash out 3 times in quick succession, each hit dealing a needle's worth of damage and healing for 1 mask up to a maximum of 3. If hitting more than 1 enemy at once, you'll get a mask for each foe hit, although still only up to the maximum of 3. The bind itself is on the shorter side, taking 1.05 seconds, and adding the multi-bind will add 1 extra hit and increase the healing cap to 4. This is also one of the few attacks that cause hit pause when hitting an enemy. And finally, if there is no enemy in range, the bind will end early and not cast the 3rd hit, shortening the time you're stuck in the animation. Moving on to the slots, and the Witch Crest has a total of 6, which places it 3rd overall. These are made up of 1 skill slot, 2 red slots, 3 blue slots, and no yellow slots. In a perfect world, having 1 extra yellow slot would make this even better, allowing the use of both dice and the weighted belt, which are both solid choices for this crest. However, considering you end up with 4 blue slots and still 1 yellow slot from the Vesty Crest, it means this has possibly the most potent slot layout geared towards combat in the game, and allows you to easily equip pretty much any tool you would want. Using the weighted belt with the Witch Crest will completely remove all recoil instead of only halving it. Similar to the Beast Crest bind, the plasmified state will not reduce the overall heal of the bind, since it's healing 1 mask at a time, although unlike the Beast Crest bind, you won't receive an extra mask just for activating it. Stay tuned for next episode where we'll be doing a deep dive on the Architect Crest. And if you want to support the creation of more content like this, consider hitting the join button to become a member. Otherwise, simply liking, commenting, and hitting the hype button will all help greatly with the algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.